So I've been having a bit of a modern rediscovery this year. If you remember back, I've talked about how, like, one of the first things I was really into was Power Rangers. And you'd think it'd be more obvious, but it took me a while to figure it out, apparently, because, I got into anime back in 2012, but I never got into Tokusatsu, specifically the original Japanese versions that were adapted into stuff like Power Rangers and Master Rider, or Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, or VR Troopers. Like, there's other stuff too. But, like, yeah, I started Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger. I liked it. I referenced it in a video. I've been still liking it. It's still ongoing. Then, of course, I watched Kamen Precure a la mode, which I did a video on, which you'd think, like that, and that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about, is, like, Precure and Super Sentai are basically the same. They're both like 50 episodes yearly, iterative installments that cross over with each other, but overall are standalone. They're both superhero focused. They're both episodic. The teams are structured with a red, a yellow, a blue, a pink, and then another one which is either black or green if it's Super Sentai, or purple in Precure. Though the other difference is that pink is the leader in Super Sentai, or no, pink is the leader in Precure, red is the leader in Super Sentai. So, but yeah, they're very similar in that way. And so, like, of course, and given my previous history with Power Rangers, like, of course, I would like these shows too. Like, I've since watched Mega Ranger, which was adapted into Power Rangers in Space, and I'm currently watching Gingamon at work, which was adapted into Lost Galaxy, and, like, neither of them are really exceptional. Like, the characters are fine. There's a couple of them that stand out. In Mega Ranger, it's the Red Ranger. He's annoying. And in Gingamon, it's the Blue Ranger. He's adorable. He's just this big oaf. He's super emotional. Like, he cries. And he's a fucking dork, and I love him. Goki, he's so good. So yeah, it's not really surprising that I like these shows, And of course, like, as I found out with Aikatsu, I'm just interested in, I don't know, something that makes me like stuff aimed at kids, and of course shonen and long stories. But I guess what's also interesting about, Precure and Super Sentai is also the differences, not just like the obvious ones. Like, yeah, they're both superheroes. One's a magical girl anime and one's a live action anime. Like, not just because of special effects. I mean, like, at least with Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger, like, a lot of the acting, especially the suit acting, like, there's one moment where the Red Ranger splits into three, and they're for the first time, and then they kind of like look at each other, and then they like lean in and go, eh? And I was like, this is literally just anime. But I guess one of the other things that I found was interesting about how they're different is actually in how they are structured. So, like, with Super Sentai, like, from what I've seen, again, very episodic, and you'll get individual episodes focused on individual characters, and like with Mega Ranger and Gingamon, it's just very, like, scattered. Like, there's no real clear arc. Like, you'll get it, like, there's been 2 episodes with the Pink Ranger, Saya, in Gingamon, and, like, she's nice, and helping people, because she's a hero. But, like, other than that, there's no real connecting factor. Lupin Ranger has had some more clear arcs, being built up to, but even then, they're not quite as, like, cohesive. Like, I could tell you what individual episodes on Toma, the Blue Ranger, are. Like, there was one recently where he's connecting to the Gold and Silver Ranger, he's both colors. He switches between the two because he's a cop, and he's a Lupin Ranger and a Pat Ranger. So, they connected on their professionalism, but I wouldn't say that, like, his whole arc has been about professionalism, which is what I bring this up, because it's to compare it to Precure, especially a la mode. It's like each of the characters have their own. I even mentioned it in my video. They each have their own thing that's sort of steadily built up to. Because like how Precure structures its story is in like 5 to 6 episode like chunks almost, give or take. So in Hugto Precure, there's like 5 episodes, I think. Yeah, to introduce all the main characters. And then the next 6 episodes are sort of like there's, another episode for each character, and that ends this arc for the main one at episode 11. So, whereas a la mode had 6 episodes to introduce the 5 main characters. There was one episode that was just focused on the group at the time, and then they did 2 more episodes for the last 2 of the main characters. And then there was another 5 or 6 episodes. I think it was also 5. There was just one for each character, ending on a climax. So, like, you get these, and Lupin Ranger vs. Power Ranger also has, like, they both had, like, Gingamon at episode like 12, they beat the first main antagonist, the lieutenant of the final boss, basically, and now the current stuff I'm watching has the second one, who's scheming and sending monsters after them, and he's probably gonna bite the bullet by around episode 22 or 24. Just predict going by the structure. Not that Precure is super rigid about the 6-episode structure, but it's just like, I just thought it was interesting to notice how, like, even though they're both these 50-episode shows that are, perfect for 12-episode chunks of story, that they don't quite do that, or they do it differently. Like Super Sentai, sometimes it doesn't, like, they introduced the 6th Ranger about the 20-episode mark. Lupin Ranger's Fat Ranger, I think it was like 20 or 22. Mega Ranger was 20 or 22. Gengamon just introduced him at like episode 17 or 18, so a little earlier actually. Precure introduced that character like even earlier, but they didn't actually become the next Precure, or Precure a la mode rather, until later. Probably around the 24 mark. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting how, like, even though they are similar age demographics, similar just genre, I suppose, because there are actually, like, Precure's a bit more slice of lifey, I guess, but even then, almost every episode has an action sequence at the end where the monster shows up and they gotta beat it. Just like, whereas Super Sentai, the monster is more of a threat throughout. I suppose, like, it's pretty rare that a monster just comes out of nowhere in Super Sentai, but with Precure, it's more like, yeah, the episode happens, the characters are having their conflicts and stuff, and then the monster will appear, and their conflict will usually finish, like, they'll kind of just get a chance to show off their new character bit, or whatnot, whereas with Super Sentai, that kind of, So, yeah, Super Sentai, that happens too. Though I guess what I also thought was interesting was, sort of how it compares, because Kamen Rider, I've only seen the newest one, Build, and Kamen Rider's structure is completely different. Like, it's not quite, like, it's every episode ends with a monster fight. There's less main characters. I guess they start with one writer typically, and there were more over the course of the show. They did add more writers, but it's not really episodic. Like, even though each individual episode has, like, I don't know which Kamen Rider seasons this is or isn't true of. I would assume, I've heard that it is true of other seasons, but it's like, it's linear. It's like, I feel like if you like anime and you want to get into more tokusatsu, I'd actually think that Kamen Rider might be a better entry point, because it's not, like, some people don't like the episodic structure. Like, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with either, really. In fact, that's actually one of the things I wanted to bring up, but I'll talk about it later. But yeah, Kamen Rider, it's very, like, with Build, basically every episode ended with, like, a cliffhanger, and it went right into the next episode, which in turn ended with a cliffhanger, and it went on for basically 49 episodes. So, like, so it's like the perfect, Kamen Rider is great to binge, because it wants you to binge it, it wants you to be excited for the next episode. But the moment I caught up with Kamen Rider Build at around, like, episode 40, early episode 40s, I think, I started to like it less, because, like, it's the perfect binge show, but it's not a great weekly watch. And in general with me, I'm not a fan of weekly viewing in general. Like, I don't read a lot of manga, or at least not as many as I used to. I'm actually reading more now than I have in a while. I don't watch weekly anime anymore because I got sick of it, and sick of it, like, sick of watching so much, but also, like, again, if I finish a series and I just want to rewatch it because I probably missed some things because it took me so long to watch it, like, 3 months for 12 episodes, that's a ridiculous amount of time when you think about it, but that's normal for seasonal watching. So yeah, I don't like for certain shows, I don't like to do that, and for manga, because they're usually continuous stories that want you to keep reading. Like, that's the thing, Kamen Rider is, like, the way the episodes are structured are more like manga chapters in a way. Like, every Shonen Jump chapter ends with a big thing, and it's like, read the next chapter, but it's not episodic, basically, unless there are episodic manga, of course, but where each chapter is like a slice of life thing, usually comedies, gag comedies. And that's kind of why I'm actually watching Precure and Super Sentai. Like, I'm watching Hugto Precure, I'm watching Lupin Ranger's Fat Ranger, and when they end, I'm probably gonna watch the next series too, weekly, from the beginning, because, like, they're episodic. They're made to be like each week I get this whole satisfying 23-minute experience, and I like that better than getting a 23-minute episode that just wants me to watch the next one. Like, it was fine. Maybe it's setting up stuff, maybe it's a climax, but like, it might be hit or miss. But like with Precure and Super Sentai, they build to the ongoing stuff through their weekly stuff. Like that last episode of Live Power Rangers Pat Ranger. Well, okay, it had some. The villain of it pissed me off because it was like fart jokes, and I'm like, fucking why? It's just the moments that make me remember I'm watching stuff primarily for kids. It's really sucks too because the rest of the episode was like this really good interesting conflict mostly on the Red Thief Ranger, and him comparing himself to the Red Police Ranger, and sort of like being jealous of the natural heroism of others while not feeling naturally heroic himself, and like so this built and it ends on a really somber note with him like sort of like at the end of it he's just like he saved the city, but he's in his chair like mulling over it and like clearly not in a good mood. And which sucks because I'm just thinking about all the good character stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, but the farts can't. It got harder to recommend the show that episode, and my mood was definitely not peak after it, despite all the good stuff that episode. But yeah, it was a good episode. It was building to later stuff, obviously, but it's still, again, because of how they structure, introduce the monster, the heroes are doing something, the monster is doing something, they fight the monster, they beat the monster. Because that happens every episode, it's like something, but they also focus on the individual story, whereas with, like, Kamen Rider, I guess, they still fight the monster and beat the monster, but it feels more like happenstance from other events. Like, the beating of the monster is not, like, the major thing. Because, I guess, which makes sense, I guess, especially for Super Sentai, because there's always, they summon the giant mecha, the giant combining mecha, so it's more climactic. Whereas with Kamen Rider, there's no bigness to it, like literal bigness to it. It's just, he's a normal-sized guy fighting normal-sized, slightly bigger than him monsters, who don't get bigger in the end. So, like, yeah, the individual episodes will still end on big notes, but then they'll go into the cliffhangers. And Super Sentai will do it sometimes, but usually just ends the episode. So, yeah, that's basically why I'm watching Precure and Super Sentai, but not seasonal anime or and I won't be watching like Kamen Rider weekly again, even though like again, it's a great binge thing. But and the next season is called Zio, and it's apparently like another anniversary series where it sort of like calls back to a bunch of Kamen Rider series that I haven't watched. And there was another one called Decade, and then Super Sentai has one called Go Kaiger, and it's like, I want to watch those, but I want to watch them with as much context as possible. So I need to watch like 33 or 34 other Super Sentai seasons, and they're all 50 episodes each at least, so... Because that's the thing, is like, I do want to get more into Tokusatsu, but it's just really long, and like, I just really, like, I keep having this burning desire. Like, the only reason I'm watching Gingamon is because at work, I realized, like, I could watch 2 episodes during lunch break. Especially if I skip the openings and endings. But, like, the only reason I'm watching Gingamon specifically is because I keep having this burning desire. I want to watch all of Ultraman and Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, and I want to see Power Rangers and note the transformative elements of how... Because that was always what was most interesting about Power Rangers as a teenager to adult, is that they're adapting Super Sentai, but they're not just dubbing it, they're transforming elements of it into a new, audience for Americans, especially, and they're dubbing over some of the fighting, and then they're redoing their own footage, and then they're doing, of course, they have the live action, the footage with the actual actors, and, like, I want to see how they transform Super Sentai. But in order to do that, I need to watch Kyoru Sentai Z Ranger before I can even start Power Rangers. Because Power Rangers is also very, like, it's more self-referential, and, like, Super Sentai and Precure, you can watch individual seasons, and there are crossover movies and stuff, but, like, you'd never need to watch another except for, like, maybe the second season of Precure, which is a sequel to the first season, and Go Kaiger, which is definitely referenced end of the other two Kamen Rider seasons I mentioned. Like, for the most part, they're standalone. Like, I watched Build, the latest season of Kamen Rider, and it never mentioned or implied any other Kamen Rider. I didn't need to watch Kamen Rider to watch Build. I didn't need to watch Super Sentai to watch Lupin Ranger versus Pat Ranger. But I do want to have that context for it, because there are a lot of crossover movies and stuff, and I'm just interested in it. And Ultraman is apparently more lore heavy at times. I might watch the current season if it's not too, like, if it doesn't reference old stuff too much. But I do want to, I want to watch it all. And, like, honestly, apparently TokuTube, like, I only know of the channel The Vacuuminator. he's okay. He's definitely a bit, like, maybe a bit close to, like, he wears his Digi and Endless Jest influence on his sleeve, especially the Jest stuff. So, and there's pros and cons with that. Like, he's ambitious, I'll say that. But, at the same time, his videos are still, like, feelings, and I'm like, okay. And, like, in it, he did one on Power Rangers recently, and he talks about realism, and I'm like, oh my god. Or, well, he's like, an argument against it, this thing is unrealistic, and I was like, of course, it's so about superheroes, and I'm like, you could have done that a little better. But, if you've probably seen my video on realism, it's just a silly discussion topic. So it's like, because me and what we're talking, and like, we probably need to save TokuTube. He's doing a video on Kamen Rider Build, which is good, because it got a pretty bad reputation on it from its ending, even though the ending was fine. And What's doing a video on it, and I want to watch more Toku. I want to do videos, same with Precure, honestly. Like, and well, I think it ties back to the shonen stuff that I also want to do, is because, like, A, they're both aimed primarily at children, and B, I think people because they're aimed at children, people, like, don't think of them as, like, you know, interesting stories. Like, how do they have themes? They're aimed at kids, but all stories have themes, you numbnut. Like, and the other thing is that I feel like people forget storytelling when they're dealing with a long-running thing, because they just forget details, and then, yeah, so it's like, so it's definitely worth talking about. So, like if that's the thing, is like, if Precure a la mode I really liked, I gave it like a 9, but Precure fans consider it mediocre. So like, if I go deeper into these, you know, long-running, like, iterative series, like, you know, Precure, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, like, you know, I have my own perspective, but then I'll also, like, if I find, like, even a few series that are as interesting to me as Precure a la mode, then that's more videos. So, like, I do at one point in the future, like, want to, like, if I have I want to do shonen content, of course, but I also think I might dip into tokusatsu content, just do both, why not? Because, like, the shonen stuff's gonna grow my channel anyway, like, shonen's super popular, so, like, my biggest stuff has been One Piece and Fairy Tail, so, like, my Sasuke video did really well. It's like, I think it's almost at 60,000 views, like, it's really good, for me, and so tokusatsu's obviously not gonna do that well, but I don't know, I like it. I think it's interesting. I want to watch more of it. Like, I'm setting aside, like, for way in the future. It's like after I catch up with all the recent stuff and finish a bunch of unfinished stuff, like all my Steam games that I haven't played. And I started reading all of Clamp's mangography, but I never finished it. So, like, I don't know, maybe I'll put that off too. But I want to, just binge a bunch of Toku series. Just feed that hunger I have for more. I need to watch more. In fact, I'm actually going to do that soon, because the Die Ranger OP is just fucking fire. And I'm just gonna, fuck it, I'm just gonna watch Die Ranger. Gosei Sentai Die Ranger. And yeah, I just wanted to ramble a bit about these shows, because I do think they're shows. And that's interesting.